Welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. And welcome to a special show where I'm joined by Kevin Campbell, where we are going to be discussing the news which has just come out in the last half an hour or so prior to the show. And it's news that is pretty devastating as far as Everton Football Club is concerned. And that is the news, of course, that has been speculated throughout today and yesterday evening. And that is, of course, that Carlo Ancelotti has left Everton to return to Real Madrid. It's a pretty devastating blow to the club after the ambition showed to bring Ancelotti in and what he supposedly stated as his ambitions for the club while he was here. It's a hammer blow to Everton. And of course, I'm joined by former Everton stalwart Kevin Campbell. He's going to give us his opinion as well on the departure of Carlo Ancelotti. Kev, where'd you start on this one, mate? It all came out of nowhere, really, today, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think obviously this has come because Zidane felt that he wasn't backed at Real Madrid, and Real Madrid, arguably the biggest club in the world, have gone in for their own manager, and it's one of those ones where if you get a world-class manager, you run the risk of the really big teams who he's managed wanting him back, and they've come in for him, and it's one that probably couldn't. There's probably one of only 2 or 3 teams who he would walk away for, and Real Madrid are one of those teams. So unfortunately, it's happened, and I think you've got to look at it as there might be an opportunity now for the board to move quickly, move smart, move bullish, and go and get somebody to take the project forward as well. Because nobody ever said that Carlo Ancelotti is going to be the only one who's going to take Everton into the Bramley the stadium. So, hey, listen, these things happen, but now we're going to see how quick the board are going to move. And I think that's going to be really important for Evertonians.
Yeah, well, it is. I think obviously it sent the fans, it's caught you and I off guard, hasn't it, today, all this news.
Yeah.
We're constantly refreshing our Twitter screens and everything to see what the next announcement is almost. It feels like there's been a new news update every 10 minutes today. But this one has really caught everyone off guard, and it's sent Evertonians collectively into panic mode, hasn't it? Because nobody could have foreseen this. The club was finally happy with the manager it had, and it looked like we were getting some elements of stability together at long last, and it's kind of set everything back a little bit again, and it's really annoyed a lot of supporters, and it hurts, and of course it's caused a lot of distress and panic among the fan base.
Well, look, let's put it into context now. I don't think it's caused the pain yet. That's where the board have to move very quickly. Having a world-class manager, these things can happen. And the board need to move very decisively now to get somebody else in who can take the club forward. It's very important. For one of the situations, nobody could question Carlo Ancelotti being a world-class manager. I think that was really important. You saw what he done with bringing that midfield trio in. James Rodriguez, Allen, and Decore. Very, very, very good players. I called it the Rolls-Royce engine in the team. And you saw the team progress and start the season really well. And with 8 games to go of the season, we know at times the form was up and down. With 8 games to go of the season, Everton still could have finished the Champions League spot. The problem was the home form for me. Not having the 12th man there really hurt Everton this season. And I mean that. It really hurt Everton. I think it's Everton's joint worst home record. When their away form's been so good. So, it wasn't Everton at home. And the 12th man not being there really hurt the team. But again, these things sometimes happen in football, and how quickly the club move is going to tell you how smart the hierarchy are at Everton. I think that's really important. Wish Carlo well. Obviously, gutted that he's gone, but The key is, all right, who's the next guy? If the next guy could move it forward, then it's, we've got to move on with the business.
Definitely, I think the board needs to be very, very decisive. And, there's not been a lot of indications. There's been a lot of names thrown around amongst journalists today about potential replacements, but none of them seem particularly concrete. So it's hard to gauge.
It won't be concrete because it's only just happened. It's only just happened, really, where, listen, I could guarantee you Real Madrid weren't the only team after Carlo Ancelotti. I could tell you that for sure. They wouldn't have been the only team after him, but he wouldn't move. He wouldn't do anything unless it was a Real Madrid. And Real Madrid came in. They were in dire straits because Zidane walked away. And, Real Madrid, they're going to be decisive. They're not going to mess around. They're going to be decisive. And if that's the way they move, Everton have to move the same way. They have to. They can't let it drag on because you're looking at the Euros. If you don't appoint a manager, then the summer gets short.
Very short.
You appoint a manager, then you have a long summer to prepare. So they need the manager in as soon as humanly possible.
Without a doubt, I think. With that in mind, like you say, Zinedine Zidane made it quite clear that he was going to be leaving a while back, and as we said before, is it possible that Carlo Ancelotti, his head was already at Real Madrid quite a while back?
No. Nobody. No. Zidane's only came out with his statement a few days ago. He as far as he was concerned, was he going to get the opportunity to rebuild? Because, there's a few aging players in that Real Madrid squad. They need money and they've got to recruit. Now, he didn't feel the president and the leadership backed him enough. So that's why he came out with a statement and walked away. It was only a few days old. So that's why Real Madrid didn't mess around. They moved straight away. And yeah, maybe they were, because what you have to do is you have to weigh up your options. But they moved decisive. And that's what Everton need to do. You've got to move decisive now, be bullish, and go and get the man you want to take the club forward. That's the bottom line.
With that in mind, we talk about the board, and you've got a lot of influential characters, big characters in that boardroom. You've got your Farhad Mshiri, who's not backwards in coming forwards with his ambition. You've got Bill Kenwright, of course, who's been around for a long time, and also Marcel Brands, who was hired as director of football to make these big decisions. And do you think there could be a couple of different ideas, different sort of visions, and sort of maybe clashing in the boardroom over where we move?
About clashing, but obviously there'll be a short list. For sure, there'll be a short list, and you can't only have one name on the short list. You probably have 3 or 4 names, and you've got to prioritize which ones you want. First, second, third, or fourth, and then you got to go for the top one. And you look at who's available. And that's why I say Everton, the club have to be decisive, because if you're not decisive, there are a few clubs who are out for managers.
Exactly, yeah.
So you have to be decisive. You have to move and go for it. And go and get the man you want to move the club forward. But again, you get the top managers, other clubs are going to covet them. So now that you've lost the top manager, Everton now have to go and get another one. They have to go and get another one, because these top managers are worth their weight in gold. That's why Real Madrid come running to Carlo Ancelotti, because they're worth their weight in gold.
With that in mind, as watching on and watching what's unfolding, and of course, analysing the market, who is out there, who would you personally go for as the successor to Carlo Ancelotti?
Well, I think the best one right now is Antonio Conte. He's just left Inter Milan. He's won another title there. He seems to be the one world-class manager who's got the record and the resume behind him. you want somebody who's won trophies. You want somebody who knows how to organize the team, who can take the project forward. For me, he's number one. After that, there are a lot of managers, who maybe won't have the same resume, won't have the same success rate, etc. But for me, he will be the number one.
Yeah, I think that's.
But he's coveted, James.
Yeah,
that's the thing. There are a lot of clubs who would want Conte, so you have to really put your neck on the block. If you're going to get him, you've got to really push.
Yeah, and it's difficult because, of course, last time when we hired Carlo Ancelotti, it was in the middle of a season where, there weren't as many managers available. There was a lot less clubs looking for replacement managers, perhaps. Of course, there was Arsenal and Spurs around the same time. I think they may well have already announced their managers.
No, I think Spurs announced Mourinho before. And if you remember, Arsenal and Everton announced their managers virtually at the same time.
Yeah.
It was an Arsenal played Everton at Goodison. And both managers were in the stand, but they weren't taking the reins yet.
That's right, yeah.
So it was virtually at the same time, James. And what you don't want this thing to drag on. You want to be decisive. Everton need to know who the manager is ASAP.
And with that in mind, if Everton are decisive and do strike while the iron's hot, if you like, when could we expect a new manager to be unveiled?
Well, I'd say in the next few days. I think you'd be speaking to representatives, see who's interested, and then if somebody's interested, then obviously you start talking terms and transfers and all that kind of thing. Everything has to be in place, and once all that's agreed, then you get the deal done and you sign the paperwork and then you announce it. So it should be an exciting time. I don't look at it as a time for trepidation. Carlo Ancelotti is world class, of course he is. But when you appoint a world class manager, this is the type of thing that could happen. I seriously think the club could get somebody in like a Conte if they move decisively. But we'll see.
That in mind, of course, like I mentioned before, Marcel Brands is involved as a sporting director, and his plans in terms of recruitment. Do you think Antonio Conte will fit that sort of plan that they've got in place, or is that irrelevant?
The plan isn't the same, James. The plan isn't the same anymore because a new manager might have a different plan. So this is something that they have to work together on. Marcel Brands is very well respected in the game, obviously, but when a new manager comes in, he might just have a different idea on certain things. So there has to be some flexibility in there. But the new manager is the one who dictates the tempo, dictates the pace of how things happen. And one thing we've seen Everton close. We've seen Everton close this season. We've seen them, with 8 games to go, close to that qualifying for the Champions League, which is a great achievement, although it went pear-shaped in the end. Now can you get somebody in who could move it forward? This is what I look for. Can Everton get somebody in who could move it in that right direction where Everton could be challenging for Champions League yet again, and getting key players in key areas? I think that's another thing. That's another key thing.
It is. Recruitment's crucial. I mean, regardless of who's in the dugout, we need to get the recruitment right this summer.
Look, recruitment is important. Getting that Rolls-Royce engine, as I mentioned, into the football club, what that does is it shines the light on areas where you're not so strong. I had a few injuries late on in the season, and I particularly remember doing the Brighton-Everton game, and Mason Holgate's playing in midfield. That can't happen. Mason Holgate's a defender who done an okay job in midfield, but any team worth their salt, you can't be having defenders playing in midfield.
You need more squad depth.
Exactly. So again, the new man who comes in, he's gonna, there's gonna be certain criteria that he's going to want to do. He's going to want to fulfill, because he's going to look at everything. Look how Everton fell away at the back end of the season. He knows that the squad depth isn't quite there. So he's going to want some assurances that, because if he's going to be putting his reputation on the line, the club are going to have to stump up. That's the bottom line now.
Oh, without a doubt, it's an interesting, there's a lot of interesting candidates as well. There's been a few other names thrown about. Is there anyone else you particularly like to see the club pursue? If, of course, you said Conte would probably be the first choice.
Conte being number one. I mean, look, there's the likes of Eddie Howe, who's done a good job at Bournemouth, but who's an Evertonian, but he's not managed a club like Everton before. Pochettino, I think Spurs are still talking to him. Nothing's been done, from PSG. Could Everton go in and get him? David Moyes even got a mention, although I'm not too sure whether that's the right move. There are some decent managers out there, but none with the resume of Antonio Conte. So if it was me, he'll be the one I'd go for.
I think we're going to have to show some serious ambition to lure him here, of course. Ancelotti, of course, did take the job, and when a lot of people were doubting whether he would, it's not beyond the realms of possibility, but a lot of fans around, I've, spoken to a lot of Everton fans today on social media, and a lot of people are very doubtful about our prospects of getting Antonio Conte.
Yeah, but remember, everyone was doubting Ancelotti. World-class manager, won everything, managed all the big clubs. He came. So if you could get Ancelotti, why can't the team get Conte?
Yeah, well, it's one of those. The club have sure, they've got to try. They've got to give everything. They've got to try and make that a reality.
Convince him. Make him an offer, James, he can't refuse.
Just like Real Madrid did to Carlo.
Yeah, listen, that's the key. That is the key. Make him an offer he can't refuse.
What would that offer include? Bringing Romelu Lukaku back with him?
Maybe, I don't know, but I don't listen. I can't speak for him, but he knows how to win. That's for sure. He knows how to win.
I mean, and also let's not forget, he took a Juventus side who finished 7th and then went season unbeaten with them, I think, the year after. So, you can't understate that he is capable of turning things around as well. If Everton still needs a bit of a repair job, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that he could do that.
And, which is the most important thing, he knows the Premier League.
He does, yeah. He's won the Premier League.
He's won the Premier League. He knows the Premier League. So, in a sense where Carlo not knew the Premier League as well, remember that Chelsea connection, Carlo was at Chelsea, Conte was at Chelsea, know the Premier League. You've got to be convinced that if I'm going to make this move, you're going to have to make him an offer he can't refuse. And if Everton do that, why wouldn't he come?
Absolutely, but that is the tough thing for a lot of fans to take. A lot of fans are very distraught today about obviously the departure of Ancelotti. A lot of fans are very adamant that it might not, if we don't get Conte. I think Conte may well be the only announced sort of unveiling of a manager that may well lift the fans' spirits after this. It really seems to have deflated a large number of the fan base with this departure today.
I get it, James. I get it because finally Everton had a manager who you could question results and you could question performances. 100%, of course you can. But one thing you couldn't do is question his resume and his know-how. You couldn't Absolutely. Do that because he's been there, seen it and done it. Everton need another manager like that. But remember, there are a lot of teams in the market for these guys. Now, if Everton don't get a manager like Conte, then obviously you have to weigh up who's the next best thing. And after a Conte, everyone else is a risk. Let's be honest, everyone else is a risk. So, it's risk and reward at the end of the day. If you don't get Conte and he wants to go somewhere else, someone else, they have to get somebody in. So we know some fans will say, okay, let's give him a chance. Some fans won't be happy. But that's part and parcel of the job. And it's up to the manager to, if it's not Conte, the manager has to come in and prove people wrong.
Yeah, that's certainly, I think, the issue with a lot of fans, like I say, it's deflated them. I think the fans are becoming increasingly impatient now in sort of hoping to see some sort of a turnaround in the club's fortunes. And, it seems as though there's trepidation regardless of who the announcement is now. I feel like there's always going to be some sort of, I feel like Everton fans in particular, find it quite hard to trust the managers and trust in what they're.
James, let's be honest. Evertonians have seen quite a few false dawns, so I understand it. I get it.
That's precisely what it is, mate.
I've been part of it as well. Wanting the club to do so well. New manager comes in, you think things are going to change, and it doesn't change. But we have seen progress under Ancelotti. We have seen progress, and that slow build. When he first came in, he had a good summer, and then you see the progress of the team. The team with 8 games to go, were right there, and it just fell away at the end. As I said, I think the form at Goodison, put paid to any real European ambitions. But Everton are moving in the right direction, and they need a manager who can drag them there. That's what they need. A manager
if anyone's going to physically drag them, it'll be Conte.
Well, drag them there. Be able to recruit good players in certain positions, maybe players that the team don't know. Get players in and push the club forward because it's important. That's what the club need.
It certainly is what the club needs. It's what the club needs more than anything else, and I think that's what's upset the fans more than anything. The club needs stability.
Look, unfortunately, we're talking about football, and as football goes, we know 1 year, 2 years, we've seen managers come and go, and we talk about stability. But you look at the squad, and yeah, there are some holes in it. But generally, it's a lot better than it was. There's been some good, astute signings. Ben Godfrey's been awesome. You look at that midfield, Alan's in there, Decore, good. James Rodriguez had his moments, good moments. There are some moving and shaking to do, don't get me wrong, on the transfer side of things. But the squad as a whole are pretty decent. So I just think a new manager coming in could see, okay, what would I need? He might need 4 players. He might need more. I don't know what he's thinking. But to get Everton challenging, that squad needs to be deeper.
Without a doubt, I think a lot of the time, I feel sometimes players can let the standards drop. There isn't enough to push them sometimes in terms of, I feel like players know they can get away with a poor performance without losing their place in the side. I think there needs to be a constant sort of competition for places because that raises the standards of the whole dressing room in my eyes.
Yeah, and you know what? It takes a bit of time to build a squad, and a new manager coming in. I think Carlo was building slowly but smartly, because if you just make wholesale changes, then you get a disjointed squad, you get a disjointed team. He came in, he didn't make many changes. He kept it the same for 6 months. Then he got to the summer, and then he brought that midfield in. Then he moved it forward. Now, this summer was going to be a really important summer because there were certain players, I believe the board and Carlo had a really amicable meeting a week ago or something about the additions that are going to come in, and that's how you build. That's the right way how to build. So the holes start getting plugged, and the top end of the pitch is where, the midfield, the wide areas, etc. You need to bring the threats in there. So if Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Richarlison ain't doing it, you've got other players who can chip in. Then you've got a team. But now that Carlo Ancelotti's not there, obviously you've got to get a new manager. New manager, who's the new manager going to be? We don't know. So that's why I think that the hierarchy really have to be decisive and get somebody in who can make a difference.
Yeah, decision needs to be made very quickly with that in mind as well. As you said just then, you mentioned Carlo and Brands and the board all drawing up this transfer plan. that will have to be completely redrawn with a new manager in mind. With that in mind, we want the transfer strategy to be worked out, certainly by the end of the European Championships, because we need to move fast.
Now, before then, let's be honest, James, because look, if the new manager's in place, all he's going to do, the list, you look at the list and you maybe amend the list. Because there might be players on there who he fancies. Oh, I like him, There might be a list of 6 or 7 players and he might like 3 or 4, 5. You just don't know. So some might have to be redrawn, but some, it can just get amended. I like these players, but let's add this one, that one, that one, So it gets drawn up and then they go for it. Because let me tell you something. By the end of the Euros, it's too late. The players are going to be going on holiday. You want to make sure things get sorted out before the end of the Euros.
Oh, definitely.
Before. So, you know who's coming in, it's just a matter of a signature.
Exactly,
so,
yeah.
I think it's really important time for Everton now. Really important.
We're desperate for some sort of decisive move from the club. We'll just have to have a quick look while we're on just to see if anything interesting has come to pass. It doesn't look like it, but yeah, it's a very, very critical period. I feel like we say this about Everton a lot of the time, but this will be the biggest summer of the lot now, concerning the upheaval that we weren't really expecting. How do we respond to this? I think it's going to speak volumes. If we respond to this well, it could turn out very good. If we don't, it could be a disaster.
Well, and that's why I'm saying, the board have to move decisive. Losing a world-class manager is big, but it's how you react to it. You got to try and use it as a positive and keep the direction that the club's been going in. Not big upheaval, but just moving the thing forward is going to be really important right now. And who the manager is going to be the key. That's going to be the key now. So they have to move smart, they have to move decisive, and they've got to be bullish and go for it.
Absolutely. So hopefully it won't be too long before we know who the new manager is, but it's going to be a very tetchy couple of days for Everton fans, isn't it? With that in mind, seeing what the future holds. It's a tough one. It's been quite a disheartening day in large part for us today, but you just got to hope that, moving forward, like tomorrow and the days that follow, we've got to hopefully see some reports surrounding some pretty ambitious moves in terms of the replacement. And that might just be enough to lift supporters a little bit and hopefully, get a bit of a feel-good factor back among the fans, because it really has been a bit like a morgue, really, on social media today amongst the Everton fan base.
Yeah, one thing I will say, James, is I think Moshiri and the board will do what's best for Everton right now. They will do that. And look, if Carlo Ancelotti he obviously couldn't turn down the lure of Real Madrid, which I can understand. I don't think any fans would say they don't get that. I think fans admit, yeah, we get that. But the response of the football club is going to be the key now. It's important. And I think Moshiri and the board will work in the best possible way to get the best guy in. Now, we know if Conte came in, I think the fans would be like, whoa, relieved. We've got a world-class manager again. But the key is, does he want to come? This is what you're dealing with. These guys could choose where they go. So whatever decision gets made and whoever they appoint, they will be making it for the best and betterment of Everton Football Club. So, it's being in the marketplace again for a manager isn't what the club wanted, but this is what's transpired. So they've got to move quick.
Certainly. So it's over to Moshiri and co and see what they can muster up for us. And until then, it's all you guys tuning in. You've got to bite our nails for a little bit longer. With that in mind, we'll leave the big story surrounding Carlo Ancelotti, and we'll go on to what we were actually initially going to discuss prior to the upheaval that came about this afternoon, and that is, of course, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. That's, of course, we've got an ex-Everton number 9 on with me. Of course, we were going to discuss the matter of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who, in the midst of all the Carlo Ancelotti departure fanfare, there was a small matter of the England squad announcement today as well, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I should say, was included in that. Why not after a very good season? And yeah, we're gonna discuss that now. So, Kev, what would you say about Calvert-Lewin and how he's kicked on as Everton's leading striker, and also obviously trying not to mention Ancelotti too much? How much of a part has Ancelotti played in that as well?
No, I think you have to mention Carlo Ancelotti and Duncan Ferguson. You look at what Dominic Calvert-Lewin's done this season. I mean, he's been sensational for probably 2/3 of the season. The back third wasn't so great because there were a lot of opportunities for the team to push on. He got injured as well, and came back, scored a few goals, but that didn't look the same. The team didn't look the same, and that can happen. But over the course of the season, Dominic Calvert-Lewin has been he's been superstar, and that's what's propelled him into the England squad. He brings something a little bit different than other England strikers with aerial dominance, and you could throw balls into the box and he could out jump central defenders, etc. And his all-round play is improving. He's not quite there yet fully. He's a converted winger, so it will take time to add all the attributes, but the ones he does have can really cause problems for defenses at times. So that's why he's got the nod, and I'm proud that he's got the nod, because I think his game, he could definitely add something to this England squad.
But I also think he's very much a great tool for the England squad to have in terms of, like you say, the aerial threat. I don't think there's a better header at the ball probably in Europe at the moment in terms of the threat from like any sort of service into the box. He seems to thrive upon it. So he's definitely, I think he'll certainly be used as an option from the bench, won't he? Of course, I think Harry Kane's definitely the first choice centre forward, but I think there's definitely scope for Calvert-Lewin to be used as an impact sub. I think that'd be a really good, string to England's bow to use. And I'm saying, I'd like to think, he might get a goal or two at this European Championship, and it'll be great if he can, because he's worked really hard. He deserves it.
It's a great experience as well. Not only has he deserved it, James, you need him to get the experience. I think that's really important, of being in a big tournament, being with the England boys, maybe not starting, because he's only still young, but being there and getting on and making an impact and playing against some of the best defenders in Europe, giving them a tough time, seeing that he does belong, and then coming back, going on holiday and coming back, new manager, going to be a bit different. Now he's the number 9, isn't he? He's the Everton number 9, adding things to his game. New manager might see, what, I want you to start doing this now, adding that to your game. So it's all a learning curve for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but I think the experience of being at a big tournament with England will only put him in good stead. Definitely.
I think it'd be great to see him. And of course, Jordan Pickford as well, there was a lot more cut and dry, I think, with Jordan Pickford, but he's gone as well. James, on the other hand, though, about Ben Godfrey, of course, you've seen a lot more of Ben Godfrey this season at Everton, and I think he's been an absolute revelation. One might argue player of the season.
Yeah, I'm not too down about Ben Godfrey not getting in, because I think the inclusion into that 33-man squad, I think, was testimony to the way he did play. That's testimony to so he didn't quite make the 26 when you consider he was in no squads, in the qualifiers or anything like that, and then to make the 33-man squad is testimony to the way Ben Godfrey played for the football club, his versatility as well, and it gives Southgate an opportunity to have a little look at him in training and see what he's like. There's players in there that will they still be around in a year or 2 years' time? And if the manager wants to be able to look at Ben Godfrey a little bit more next season, then he's had a little snapshot, hasn't he, of what he can do
Certainly.
at the training camp. So I think Ben Godfrey's best days are ahead of him with England.
Without a doubt, and I think if he continues the level of performance that he's put in for Everton this season, I think it's only a matter of time before he works his way into the setup, because he was absolutely outstanding this season. For me, he was the best performer, most consistent performer. And considering he was only signed on deadline day as almost as a backup, I think it was meant to be like a bit of an emergency backup almost. And he was.
He proved himself, didn't he? That's the key. He proved himself, and he played wherever he was happy to play. Right back, left back, centre back. Of a 3, of a 2, he performed excellently, and his commitment was there for all to see. Aggressive in the tackle, very good reader of the game, quick, strong. So he's only going to get better. He's at a big club, and he's probably feeling good about himself. Didn't quite get into the Euro squad, but he was in the provisional squad. So, tick the box and move on and be better next season, Ben, because your England career, I think, is going to have a good one.
It's one of those, it's interesting because, we've got a lot of young lads coming through. As a striker as well, another one I'd like to touch on. This is, of course, this lad's nowhere near the England squad just yet, but Ellis Sims, it was unlucky to miss the playoff final with Blackpool the other day, but have you kept an eye on his performances in League One? Because he's been making some very good progress.
I know Ellis, I know his dad, and very good young striker. But again, it's to be able to say, he's going to be leading the line for Everton when you've got a young Dominic Calvert-Lewin there, might be a bit much at the moment. I think him getting more experience is going to be the key. Although a new manager coming in might see something in him, and he wants to, get him in and around the squad a lot more. So let's see how he reacts to coming back to Goodison Park and having a new manager, and we'll see where it goes from there. But he's done excellently on loan.
Yeah, it's certainly one of them. I think it'd be nice to see a lot more of the young lads come through. It's certainly something Everton's always prided itself on. It's not something we've seen a lot of lately. So the more of those, the better. It's great to see. And, for you as a striker, you must be, always keeping a close eye on the young strikers around the club and what they're capable of.
Well, it's important. It's important to get youth through. And Dave Unsworth and the guys have been doing a good job of getting these guys to come, get close to the first team, play some certain games. But I think the key is Everton's first team now is starting to develop, and you've got world-class stars at Everton now. Let's have it right, getting players from the likes of Real Madrid and Napoli and that type of thing. Everton have got world-class players in their squad now. Lucas Digne, world-class players. So it's going to match that. You have to be able to match them guys. Better players are going to come in as well. So the levels are moving up. So I think loans are going to get players valuable match experience, because without playing games, you're not going to be able to sustain that consistency level.
Certainly. And the last thing we'll touch on before we finish up is, of course, we touched on it a little bit when we were speaking about Ancelotti and, of course, the players' recruitment in terms of, improving the squad. Of course, we say the blueprint might change a little bit with the new manager, whoever comes in. Which areas of the squad would you like to see strengthened? Looking at this Everton squad,
everywhere, James, everywhere. Because you know what, like I mentioned, Seamus Coleman's not getting any younger. Still a fantastic player, but I think right back, you need another one. I think you need another centre half, quality centre half. So you're working with 4 or even 5 centre halves, because there's times where you want to play 3 and a 2, and the games come thick and fast, and you want to be able to. Sometimes you want to put 1 in or 2 in, and you want to revamp it, because sometimes that's what happened. That's what caught Everton out. When you had back-to-back games, going into games and players are tired and you don't see the zip in the game.
Definitely.
Midfield at times, Decore, you see when Decore got injured, there wasn't quite that midfielder who goes box to box. Again,
severely lacking.
You need a variety of players, and the wingers. I think wide players are so vital in this league. And obviously, striker, when Dominic Calvert-Lewin went down, Richarlison went up top, and he done okay. But if those two ain't a threat, you're not going to be scoring goals.
That is what it is.
Done okay, but you need threats from multiple places, and Everton don't carry a big enough threat.
That is really it was a massive problem, particularly towards the end of last season. So yeah, in terms of personnel, is there anyone in particular who you think would really improve any of those positions? Maybe.
I've always looked at Zaha, and I thought Zaha would do really well at Everton. I really do, because most of the time teams have to bank up on him 2 against 1. And if he's attracting 2 players, you've got room elsewhere. Calvert-Lewin is 1-on-1. Richarlison's 1-on-1. So you get the opposition gets lopsided because they have to. Because if you leave Zaha 1-on-1, well, he's going to have a field day. So it keeps the defense honest. It keeps the opposition honest. He's one player. I think Ancelotti was maybe looking at Koulibaly. But these players would come for Ancelotti. So again, the recruitment, the manager's key to the recruitment. Getting another midfielder would be good. Somebody who could travel with the ball from the center of the pitch. I think that's really important. So a midfielder who's going to score 10 goals. When's the last time Everton had that? A midfielder who could score 10 goals.
Yeah, I think it is rare for us. Of course we had even if you count Tim Cahill as a midfielder.
Yeah, it's probably Tim. Tim's probably the last one who hits double figures. And if you've got the strikers and the wide men chipping in, your striker getting 15, you get a midfielder getting 10, you get the wide men getting 5 to 10 goals. Now you win with a shout.
Definitely. And
you want in with a shout. Definitely.
We've not had that for a long time, not at all.
But that was, I personally believe that was Carlo Ancelotti's next plan, is to be bigger threat from the top end of the pitch, whether it's the wide men and strikers, centre midfield. You need to be able to score goals, multiple positions.
Without a doubt. In terms of recruitment, it's heavily dependent on the manager, I think, because of who it depends. Certain players will want to play for certain managers. But one thing I'd love to ask you, of course, I interviewed you not long ago and we spoke quite in depth about your career. And when you were saying you signed for Everton and I asked what convinced you to sign, you said that you chose Everton before you even got to hear some of the other names.
Yeah, I didn't hear any other names because I know the club Everton are. Everton, I made my debut against Everton. I know the size of the club. I know what Everton are about. So, I didn't need to hear any other name. That was the first name mentioned, and that's where I'm going. So I knew. Look, managers know the size of Everton. It's not rocket science. People know the size of Everton. People know Everton have been haven't been where they should be. And there's a project on. Now, getting a manager who's willing to pick the project up from this point forward, I think, there's a decent squad there. Obviously need some additions, but Everton's still got a pull, but they've got to be decisive. That's the key now. Got to be decisive. Definitely. Get the manager in and start working. So important.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think that was the question I was literally going to pitch you then when he was talking about when you decided to join Everton. Is Everton, I don't think, possesses that kind of pull that it perhaps did. I know we weren't great when you joined, but I don't think it has the same pull. Players of your ilk, you were in the the early stages of your career, you were playing against an elite Everton side. You mentioned made your debut against them. There's players now who are in that stage of your career you were in 1988, who weren't even born the last time Everton won silverware. I mean, I'm 25 and I've never seen us win anything in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real problem for the club. I think I really worry about like what players really want to join Everton and believe in the project.
Well, what you got to understand is it's Everton are at a point now where it's all down to the manager now, because people look at the success of the club. Yeah, Everton have been a successful club over the past, but we really, you're looking at the here and now. Everton are a project. Everton are a project that's building to try and move into the new stadium with a team that's challenging. That's the key. You need the manager who can recruit. The manager is the one who's going to be the recruit. If you don't get a manager who can recruit, we've seen what happens previously. We have seen it.
Sure, yeah.
And having Carlo Ancelotti there, who's been able to recruit world-class players, makes a massive difference. It does. So again, Everton need to be really smart. The board needs to be bullish, decisive, and they need to make offers that people can't refuse to get them in the football club, to get the club. The club has only stopped at the station. We don't want it derailed. We want it moving forward now. So we need another driver to just come in and move that train forward.
I like that analogy. It's a lot more reassuring than a lot of people have literally saying the words like the wheels have come off almost today. I think that's what the general consensus has been amongst the fan base. I don't know.
Yeah.
We've experienced a lot of hardship in the last sort of 2 decades, and to understand, the false dawns, like you say, I think a lot of fans are quick to jump to conclusions, myself included. So to hear that is quite reassuring. But as you say, that kind of reassurance can only be, reiterated if we get the right man in for the job.
The key is, just like anything, James, who gets recruited? Whoever gets recruited tells you a lot about what the football club are about, what the hierarchy want. You get somebody in of who you think, okay, we could work with him, then you're in the guy could take it forward. Sometimes it won't work out, but you need somebody in there who fans can look at the resume and say, he could take us forward. Really, Definitely. That's what you want. And with recruitment, he can bring in better players. Because if the manager can't recruit better players, where are you going to go?
Exactly. I think that's a good way of looking at it when we're looking down the list of the managers that we've been linked with and other managers you people may want. I think it's all about trying to find out which players have, if not an elite manager, like you mentioned the Conte before, which managers have taken clubs in a similar sort of style maybe to Brendan Rodgers at Leicester, who've taken a club from around the middle of the table where we are and taken them into the elite.
Well, and you know what? It's sometimes it's difficult to say because a lot of the other clubs ain't size of Everton. This is they're not esteemed in the history that Everton have, albeit the historical side. The fan base are demanding. The fan base know what it's like to win, and are desperate to win. That's why it's so painful, because Everton want to get back to winning ways. And having a manager like Ancelotti there, was a godsend, because you start seeing the recruitment. Players are coming. Players probably don't even know Everton really, but they're coming for Ancelotti. That has to be reciprocated now with a new manager. New manager comes in, the recruitment drive starts from second one, not minute one, second one. As soon as he comes through the door, the short list is amended and the club are going after these players. That's the key.
We've certainly got to move fast. As I've said, there's a lot of other clubs looking for a new manager. It's got to be done, and it's got to be done fast.
It's got to be done yesterday. That's the key. It's got to be done yesterday. Get the driver back on the train and let's get the train moving.
Definitely. And with that in mind, we'll leave it at that. We'll get this train moving. We'll call it a day on this one. It's been great to have you on again, Kev. Always great to have you on the channel. Thanks for joining me this evening in a very, very interesting set of circumstances. We weren't really expecting to be discussing all this, all these ups and downs.
I know. Listen, I hope when the new manager gets announced, we can do something again, because that will be an interesting appointment, I'm sure.
Certainly going to raise eyebrows, but I'm touching too much on Carlo Ancelotti. It'll raise a couple of eyebrows, but it'll be great to have you on again, Kevin. Hopefully, it won't be too long until we're discussing, the prospects under a new manager. Like you say, the sooner it gets done, the better.
Yeah, definitely. I look forward to that, James.
Oh, love it. Great. Thank you so much for coming on, Kev. Great to have you on. And of course, thank you guys for tuning in on the Toffee Blues. Give us a comment on this video. Let us know your opinions on, the news about Ancelotti and who you'd like to see as a manager, recruitment, the England lads. So everything we've touched on, basically drop a comment. Give this video a like and subscribe for more content. In the coming weeks, there's going to be some very interesting content coming up as well. So definitely get subscribed and tune into that. Like I say, once more, thank you, Kev, for joining me, and you guys, thanks for joining on the Toffee Blues, and we'll see you next time.